We want to build a truth table for a given statement, P and Q or R. So first you want to break this down into individual components, P, Q, and then P and Q, and then with the R, and then together combine that into a final statement. So let's think of combinations that are possible here. So first, notice that both P and Q could be true, and when they're both true, we know the AND statement will be true. Okay. Now, suppose that R is true in this combination, then the P and Q or R will be true as well. Okay. So when both true, the AND and OR will be true statements when both components are true. So now, what about the other combination? Suppose that the P is true, Q is true, and of course P and Q will be true, but here the R is false. Suppose that the R is false. Okay? Then with this statement, okay, connecting these two with the OR to give us the final statement, we know that this will still be true. Okay? Because when it comes to the OR, when it comes to disjunction is only going to be false when both of these will be false, when both components are false. But one of them is true, right? So the overall disjunction statement must be true. All right. Now the next combination will be when the Q is false. So suppose that P is true, Q is false now. When the Q is false, the AND sign will be, the end result will be false, all right? Because we know that when at least one of the components is false, the conjunction will be false, all right? So now in this combination, we're going to let the R be true. And then notice again, since not both of them are false, these components for the final statement, the disjunction must still be true, right? Because both of them must be false in order for this disjunction to be false, right? So one of them is true, so the end result is true. Now, suppose with this combination of P and Q, in which P is true and the Q is false, and of course we have to copy this, suppose that in this combination the R statement will be false. That means both of these components are now false, right, to determine the final statement. And we know that this disjunction will be false because both of these components are now false. Now, let's see. So now we use the fact that we tried different combinations with both true and we tried both false. But we didn't try the P being false, right? So let's assume that P is false and Q is true. The AND, of course, the conjunction result will be false, right? Because conjunction says at least one of these guys must be false. And indeed it is, right? So we get the false. Now suppose in this combination the R is true. Now we're going to study these two components and we know the disjunction is still going to be true. Because disjunction calls for both of these to be false, which it is not. So the result is still true. Now the next part, we're going to make the R false with the same thing for the first three. The R was, let's make the R false now. When the R is false, look what happens. We have two components for the final statement that are false, and we know the disjunction must be false because both of them are false. And now what we're going to do, the final combination is to make the Q false just as the P is false, right? So the P is going to be false and the Q is going to be false, right? This combination was not hitherto explored. So when both of these are false, of course, for the conjunction, for the AND, one of them must be false at least, one or two, right? In this case, two of them are false, so of course, the end result will be false. And of course, you want to copy that down for the next combination for the R that we're going to explore. But in this combination, the R is going to be true. Let it be true. And these two components for the final statement, one of them is false. Now for the disjunction, this is not enough. So we're going to make it true because both of them must be false for the disjunction to be false. And only one of them is. So it's still true. And for the final combination, of course, we want the R to be false this time. And of course, when both of these components are going to be false, the disjunction has no way but being false. So that would be the result. So I hope this was useful and fun. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video.